This is Rod Gels, and this is the Rock Band Program Podcast. This week, I have a former student, budding, not so budding rap artist named Alex Brouse, or Vision. I'm going to call you Alex.
Yeah.
Because I've known you since you were 11. Okay, so we're going to get your story. Okay, because this is infinitely interesting to see how you grow, how people grow through the years, and what they've done. You know, where their imagination takes them. So anyway, so how did we meet? What was our first interaction?
Well, I would say like it was about 2 years after I started playing guitar, maybe three. I had a friend, David Foote, and David Foote introduced me to the Perfect Fifth, specifically Rod, because we were chatting, and I remember I'd always wanted to play in a band, and he called me up one night and was like, "Hey, I did this rock band program over the summer. It was supposed to be like a 1 week long camp, but we kept it going, and the one guitar player moved to Texas. So if you can audition, you might be able to make the band." And I remember that phone call distinctly because I was like freaking out because I thought like, you know, I'd always wanted to be in a band, and I was like, well, this is my chance. Like, I make it in a band, we're gonna be big, we're gonna play shows everywhere, and we're gonna do stuff. And yeah, and then I went in for the interview, the audition. I can't remember what I played. I think I played like Holiday by Green Day or something like that. And then yeah, I got in the band, and then I remember it was a very well, it was a sharp learning curve for someone who had never played standing up before.
Mm-hmm.
So it was definitely
Musicians.
yeah, and playing with different musicians besides another guitar player. Like I'd only ever played with another guitar player, and that was David Foote.
Yeah.
So it's like you show up, and it's intimidating, but it was also one of the most exciting things for sure. And we practiced in that little garage behind Perfect Fifth, and yeah, and that was Scarlet Revolver. So that's kind of how
The birth of
how
Scarlet
we met.
Revolver.
Exactly. Yeah.
Scarlet Revolver needs to get a lot of props. When I tell you this, every time a Scarlet Revolver practice session makes it onto my memory list, and I see something we worked on that I never remember,
Yeah.
it's always badass. It's always
It is.
it is always completely like, you know, in a different world, we would have had a recording studio right there to match it. Say, okay, as soon as you record this, as soon as you come up with the idea, let's put it down onto tape.
Yeah.
In a different world, that would have happened. But anyway, everything and it was not one sound either.
No, we did.
You did all sorts of. You started off with kind of Green Day-ish.
Yeah, we did, like, because I remember we covered a couple Green Day songs, and we were doing like we did some Black Sabbath, we did things like that.
Yeah.
And then there was like a period of time where we transitioned pretty heavily into like metal. And then there was another time where we transitioned pretty heavily into like more funky jazzy stuff. So we were all over the place, but it was in like
working on your sound. It's like
yeah.
the thing that I was teaching is, if you're going to make something original, it's going to be a mixture of things.
Exactly. And that was, I mean, for the creativity side of things, like it was definitely like when we started writing songs, I mean, we had songs like He's So Gone, but then we also had songs like Writing As We Go. And those, if you look at those two songs together, He's So Gone's kind of this like rocky kind of pop thing that's a little bit harder.
It's kind of pop punk.
Yeah, and then you look at
pop though. It was
yes.
it wasn't cheesy.
Lot of harmonies on the guitars, a lot of really really cool stuff there. And then you look at Writing As We Go, and it's an acoustic kind of
Yeah.
almost like ballady catchy chorus song, and it's like
Kinda
there was a lot of difference.
Kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's like and I think we wouldn't have had that kind of approach to writing had we just stuck with that Green Day phase.
Yeah.
So I think it definitely expanded that.
Yeah. So you did summer camps. Every summer camp you were a part of, I remember some of the stuff we would do. I'm trying to. You were shooting red.
I wasn't shooting red. That was first ever music video experience for
Yeah.
me. That
I
was
don't know if
fun.
that was your first time in the studio. I don't know if we had already gone in there by the time we did. I
I
don't know.
don't think so. I think that was my first time ever, because then the second time would have been with Logan. The first time was with Jason, I think.
Okay. Yes.
And that was, yeah.
So Jason was first.
Jason was first, and that was with Shooting Red when we did that radioactive
We did
cover.
a radioactive cover. We arranged it. We spent the week, um, the first couple days of the week, arranging radioactive for like 10 guitar players.
Yeah, there were a lot of guitar players
So
and two singers, two lead
like one guitar
singers.
player doing elephant noises.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
I think the second half of the week was, well, actually going to record it and then recording the music video for it,
Yeah.
where we went into like that old Nationwide building and recorded like all this stuff. And I mean, that was, I would say in terms of like the summer camps, that was probably one of my favorites.
Mhm.
Um, because like, well, not only did I meet a lot of friends there that, continued throughout all the other camps and stuff, but it was also like, it kind of like from the perspective of somebody who wanted to make a music video and who wanted to be in like a recording artist and everything, like that was like a taste of everything, because it was like not only are you playing in a band, you're meeting cool people, you're playing a song that you like, but you're doing a rendition of it that sounds way cooler in your opinion,
Mhm.
and you're recording a music video, you're doing all that in the span of a week.
You're exposed to, and I know you don't know this necessarily, but you were exposed to Cal Weary. Well, you do know Cal,
Yeah.
but also the late Ryan Rossum. He is no longer with us, but
Okay.
you're going to praise Ryan because
Mm-hmm.
Ryan was a director from York, Pennsylvania, and as I said, he is no longer with us. He passed away.
Mm.
So, but he was a wonderful director. That is like some of that stuff, the things that yeah, that was a wonderful experience for everybody involved. Everybody. So anyway, we move on. We have done stuff. We did a lot of stuff in the like we moved to Metropolis, music at Metropolis, and then all kinds of things with Richard
Yes.
Riley. A lot of we did some Rolling Stones kind of songs. We did some songs he made fun of, songs he liked more.
That was, yeah, very, very true.
And it's fun. Yeah, that's Richard's personality. It's like but um if he liked it, he liked it. But anyway, so you knew where you stood with him. Right?
Yes, yes,
But so and then Scarlet Revolver goes into the studio with Logan Summy.
yes,
Okay. And by this time Scarlet Revolver just brought in Eli Weary.
yes. I do remember that.
Okay, so Eli Weary was like kind of the missing link. Um, that was a missing needed link. That was loved Fiona. She had a great rock and roll energy, but at a certain point, it wasn't for her anymore.
Yes.
But Eli took that and just made it the best it possibly could. So where do we go from there? So we all bunches of years of just working on songs. More. I'm guessing more kind of coming up with songs and borrowing from other people and
Yeah, it was, well, so like,
everything we learned, we put into our own songwriting.
yeah, I would say like, well, once Eli joined, it was a very different experience because, like you said, I mean, it was also a struggle when, with having trying to have a bass player also be the lead singer and everything like that, and and that was one of the harder parts of being in the band earlier on, because it's like when we're all kids, so learning how to not only play bass and sing on top of that,
It was the
and
hardest
then I
thing
mean you're
in
trying to
the
teach.
world.
Exactly. And you're trying to teach, David and I as well to sing while playing guitar, and neither one of us wanted to sing. And it's kind of like, you're trying to teach all that. And then there was Ryan, who was just kind of, he would do whatever. He would play guitar, but he was older than us. So he understood that that's how a band works.
Yeah,
So we're doing all that. And then by this time, Eli had joined, and I think Ray had joined too.
yeah.
And Eli brought like this front man presence to the band, and that was like, for the first time it seemed in like a long time, aside from David singing TNT, for the first time it was like we had this very distinguished front man who was like, you know, the life of the band, and he would get everybody else moving. And um I remember playing shows from that moment on was very, very different, because every show we would play with Eli, it was like, Eli's setting the bar up here for energy, and if you're not
You're not.
anywhere near that
You
bar,
look like a fool.
exactly, you're gonna look more foolish not moving than you are if you
Exactly.
were to move. So
You're gonna look more foolish not singing backup vocals when you should be.
exactly. And I think the biggest concert that made me think that was a Thon Factor at CV, the
Yeah.
first time Eli was there.
Yeah.
And we blew that performance out of the water. And unfortunately, I don't think we didn't win that one, but or no, we did. We won the first one that he
Won
was
the
in. We
first year. That was a coup.
And then
That was a coup.
yeah, and yeah, exactly. That was
We're gonna
overthrowing
let that
the
happen again.
no, no. And aside from all the band politics within the school,
Yeah.
we killed it the second year too.
Mhm.
And I think the the performances alone were something that definitely improved with Eli's presence. And I think especially the biggest indicator of that was the what was it, the Terror at the Ballpark
Oh
performances,
yeah. Hmm.
where we improvised metal for 3 hours 2 days in a row or whatever.
And
That was, I mean, you can't.
songs great. That's what I'm saying. Great songs came out of that. Great riff.
Yeah.
Great riffs came out of that. And one of the
And
one of the nights Logan was not there,
yeah.
where he wasn't there for the first set, and we had to play with a drum machine.
Yes, I do remember that. And then, I mean, Ray and I had to constantly come up with different licks and different solos, and then Eli's just making up entire verses on the spot.
Hmm.
And that was like
That's the thing with
incredible.
Eli. Also, was the songwriting. He was a songwriter,
Yeah.
a lyricist, and he also had a theater background. So, um, I don't necessarily know that rock was his first go to.
Mm-mm.
Pretty sure it wasn't, but he can character act.
Yeah, so he can act like a rocker if he needs to. And he definitely did.
Yeah, and it gave him a dimension. It gave him a dimension that didn't exist. In other words, it was more interesting because it was that way. Because
Yeah, because you
just
never knew.
yeah, a lot of guys just listen to rock, and as I said, and I've always said, it's like it's about the mix. You bring a lot of stuff into the mix, you have more to choose from. So anyway,
Exactly. Yeah.
that was your Scarlet Revolver experience. You then became a bass player with Soul Rider.
I did. I did. And that was, well, that was also a very, very like formative kind of experience for me as well, because it was like, so initially I think you reached out to me and you were like, hey, we might need some help. We need a bass player for this. It'll only be for like a little bit, come out, help out, and play some bass on a couple songs.
Yeah,
And I was like, and I remember who Soul Rider was. I remembered it was the band who at the time I was like, oh, those are all the younger teens. Like those are the,
it used to be fun.
like when, yeah, and they used to be the kid band back when we were still Scarlet Revolver. Like it was like they were young, fresh, new, starting out in a band.
Yeah.
And I remember going in, and I think, well, obviously I knew Blake from some of the summer camps, and I knew Aiden because I had seen him play before, and I was like, wow, this kid's like incredible, like really incredible on guitar for his age. And like
He got good pretty quick.
he
Like
did, he did.
as soon as he learned power chords, or as soon as he caught the bug, it was a couple months before he was able to do at least really solid rhythm guitar, and then
Yeah.
and it would
Well, and I think his dad, I mean, obviously his dad being in a band
Mhm.
and
Sure.
going and playing shows definitely helped.
I'm not even sure that like in the early stages, his dad wasn't in a band.
Oh, really? See, I didn't know that, but I
His
knew
dad, yeah,
once
his
I
dad came
joined.
up like with Aiden.
Really?
Yeah,
That's cool.
because one of the
And that
one of the I think one of the 5-star gigs, we were at his house and it was an acoustic duo. They played an acoustic duo with us. That's all he was doing. So
oh, cool.
Defiant was is Joe Defiant.
Yeah, and they're doing some
Yeah.
pretty nice shows now. Pretty sizable
Yeah.
shows.
Opening for everybody and doing, yes. They're doing
So
it.
that's
So yeah. So the Soul Rider, you went in the studio for that.
yeah, so I was the bass player, and I think the song name we did was it was Armageddon was the song, and I remember that was so when we did He's So Gone for Scarlet Revolver, that was like a little bit before my time of like being fully involved and wanting to be like a recording artist. I think by the time Armageddon rolled around, that's when I kind of started to click for me that like being a recording artist was like one of the dreams. So like I remember I was much more like mentally involved. I was watching everything when we did Armageddon, and I was like, I was doing bass, and I was like, well, if you need a guitar riff, like I got you, and if you need a background vocal, I'll be in it, and if you need like, and I remember, you know, around that same time, Wyatt had just like started taking lessons from Phil Freeman, and you watched his vocals go from like pretty good to, wow, this kid can sing under the right conditions, and like
And
I
again, right
think
lyrics.
yes,
Those
and
lyrics were his.
exactly. And he came in. I remember we were at practice and he was like, well, the first time it was like, go home and write lyrics. And he was like, I'm working on them. I don't know if I can come up with anything. And I think Blake came up with some lyrics. And I think Wyatt took some inspiration from that. But then the next time he showed up and he's like, oh, yeah, I finished the lyrics. Yeah. And it was like, all right, let's try it. And he sang it. And it was like, whoa, like it's got a chorus, it's got a pre-chorus, it's got verses, it's got,
A cool,
everything that you could
cool riff.
need. Yeah, a cool riff, um,
Blake
weird
solo.
tuning.
Blake solo was epic. It
It
was.
was it was incredible. I remember listening to him
Listen,
recording that.
listen to him. That that guitar solo. That was a. I'd like to take total responsibility for it. I can't.
No,
I
I remember,
I've known Blake since he was like whatever 9 years old or whatever, and I've played
yeah,
him the whole way through. But it's like that was his solo. That was his solo,
he
and it's like
and he was in that booth with Logan recording that for probably about 45 minutes, and he was like, I need to get it right, and we were like, well, that last take sounded good, but then when he got the actual take that he wanted, it was like, oh, I get it now. I know why he wanted to push for that final take, because he had the solo in mind,
hmm
and he when he finally played the one,
he
it
composed.
was
Yeah,
and that was really really cool as well. And I think like Soul Rider, because again, it was like I was a senior in high school, a junior in high school, and then a senior in high school while being in Soul Rider. And I think one of the big things that was different from Scarlet Revolver was like having been older and having had all the experiences with Scarlet Revolver, my level of comfort on stage was much better. So I wouldn't necessarily say I would move. I mean, I'm a like, and obviously as a bass player, there's the stereotype you don't move as much as everybody else. You just kind of ride the pocket.
which is horse hockey.
Yeah, exactly. And I tried to ride that stereotype for a little bit, but I think eventually towards the end, once all of us as a band started gelling much better, I think we started to experiment more on stage, and we had a couple nice stages we played at. I mean, there was and this was
Many
like,
night stages.
yeah, and this was after, we would get help for shows from Perfect Fifth and stuff. Like, because I mean, before we would do like Fed Live and stuff, and
Soul
and
Rider
that
wasn't
was
Perfect Fifth.
was that not?
No, Soul Rider was um
Well, Soul Rider was basically you, right? The
Soul Rider
Metropolis.
was Metropolis, solely Metropolis. It started out um, as I said, 5 star, and its roots. There are people that in its roots were like Devin Beck was a singer in 5 star. Who's
Okay.
now a country artist.
Okay.
Okay, so we have that. That's how long this goes back. So it's like, um,
Well, and like getting those shows again, because like with Scarlet Revolver, it was like I think having the rock band program, like you had the All Star Band, and then you had, Scarlet Revolver, and it was like any show that was available in the area, we would pretty much go to,
mhm.
and like the Fed Live shows and stuff. I remember the Fed Live shows. I was like, at my age, I was like, yeah, we made it. Like we're playing big stage, maybe 200 people in the audience, stage lights, like actual mic'd amps. Like we've made it. Like this is so cool. And then like with Soul Rider, we played that outdoor festival, and that was probably the biggest stage I think I've ever. We played two outdoor festivals. There was one in like I think like out in York, and then there was one I don't even remember where the other one was, but that was one of the ones that we got
Yeah, yeah.
paid for.
And you also did a um, Jubilee days every Jubilee day.
Yeah, exactly. And it was like it was kind of like cool watching that from like the perspective of having had played shows in the past and understanding that like those shows aren't easy to come by. Like if you don't have a solid group who's, deciding to go to those shows, like you're not going to get those shows. And I've learned that as like a rap artist too. Like doing everything on my own, like I literally just reached out to HMAC recently trying to see if I could play something there, and it's incredibly hard to get a hold of them. Like you got to like email the right person, then they got to check your credentials, see if you have enough people who are going to show up. And you know that's a lot of the stuff that I didn't really look at when I was younger, but then whenever I was like 17, 18 years old,
Because
and
the doors that were opening for you was because of the outside forces. Whether
yeah, and it wasn't
it be
just
the
like
Perfect Fifth or
or
the
Metropolis.
or Metropolis or the folks. Let's be honest, the team around Soul Rider, parents
The parents, yeah.
backed it. The parents supported it. So rock bands can't do it like the rock bands. You wanting to perform, parents have to be a part of this process.
Exactly. Like you got to have support. And I remember like I don't even remember. There was one show where they were potentially talking payment, and they were like, "Oh, you guys might get paid." And I think like the parents were like, they fought a little bit, and then we actually did get paid by the venue for. And I remember they showed up at the one venue and they handed out like little envelopes, and everybody got like it wasn't crazy, but we didn't care about the pay anyways. Like we were excited to play the show, but then to see that envelope and be like, wow, we got paid for that performance. It was like that's really cool. Like it's like that's what you dream of as like an artist is like, yeah, like becoming a professional artist. Like in the technical terms, professional just means making a living off of.
Yeah.
So like just to see that kind of that first pay come in, it was like, wow.
Transaction.
Yes, and it wasn't just a, you know, or even in the case of like, okay, we'll pay the venue to play, because sometimes you do that too. And it's like, if you pay the venue to play, it's like, okay, I'm paying for the exposure that the venue is going to give me. But when you get paid, it's almost like, okay, from the perspective of a band, it feels like we did well enough that the venue thought we brought them people.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like a really good feeling as well, because it was like we would have people that would show up consistently to the shows, and it was, I mean, it was great. Yeah, it was. And I really really enjoyed my time with Soul Rider. And I think, I mean, obviously going off to college, kind of made it start to kind of fall apart.
That's what broke up the band. It's like
Yeah, and it was kind of like, obviously, and we had talked about, oh, maybe we'll do it over the summers and stuff, and unfortunately that hasn't really, panned out to anything yet. But I do think, I still keep in touch with like Wyatt and like everything like that. And Aiden, not so much, but I know if I reached out to him, he would definitely answer. It's not like he has anything against me or anything.
yeah.
But like I know like me and Nick, Bryan, and Wyatt, we would always like we would hang out at least once or twice in the summer after Soul Rider happened, and we would like record a little fun thing. And
That's wonderful.
yeah.
That's wonderful. All along probably the Soul Rider experience, you had this I say side creative thing going on.
Yeah, it was funny because I was doing the rap during Soul Rider a little bit.
This is the beginning of your current direction.
Yeah.
Many people don't know this, but your vision.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's spelled about as hard as it can be spelled. But
so what are the roots of vision?
so during like around 10th grade, I got introduced to music production. And whether it be through school, we had a couple competitions for in the engineering program, and one of the categories is music production. It was partially that, and I was in a random group chat with a couple friends, and they would just send rap lyrics in the group chat. No beat, no nothing. They would just send the lyrics and they would go back and forth as to who had the better lyrics. And I remember I always saw that, was intimidated by it, and was like, I can't write lyrics at all. And I was still kind of coming off of the songwriting camps. And I remember I had a hard time during those, even like when you're outlining like the perfect way to write lyrics, for some reason it still wasn't quite clicking with me, even though I was absorbing everything and I was seeing other people write, it hadn't clicked. And then I started watching my friends and I was like, man, really anybody can do this. And I got into production because there was an app that I had on my phone. It's called Oxy, and it was free. And you could put 808s down, you could put hip hop drums down, and me and my buddies would send beats back and forth. Eventually, that evolved into GarageBand, and for like a very short period of time in 10th grade, I thought I was going to be a rapper because I started listening to NF, who's a Christian rapper that raps about like a lot of like the hard times he's had in his life and stuff like that, and a lot of the mental health stuff. And I was like, I'm gonna do that. And I wrote a couple really really bad songs. And I had a notebook and I was like, this is my notebook, and I would write all my lyrics in there, and I'll go back to that notebook every once in a while, and like those lyrics are not good. Like they are very much like, they were probably what you would consider dummy lyrics,
Yeah.
but they were the final lyrics. And like it was kind of like molding this whole thing. And then around 11th grade, um, I focused a lot more on sports, and I was also getting in with Soul Riders. So I kind of dropped the idea of being a rapper. Um, until about like end of 12th grade, I started pondering again, and I was like, maybe. And then right after senior year, it was like, all right, I'm gonna make a song. And I made my first song ever called OCD. Recording quality was terrible. I recorded it on my $20 mic, which I'm actually using now. But I recorded it on that. Didn't know how to mix, didn't know anything,
Mm-hmm.
and just released it like a week after I recorded it. And
Do
it was over one of my friend's beats.
it's a do-it-yourself aesthetic where you
Yeah,
learn as you go.
exactly. And I dropped it, and to my amazement, because I started by, I was advertising on my Alex Brouse Instagram, so my main Instagram. And I actually called myself Theory. I didn't call myself Vision at first. I called myself Theory. Um, and funny story, I actually secured the name on Instagram, Theory Official, and that was like my name. And right around that time, the band Theory of a Dead Man switched their name to Theory, and I got tagged in a couple of their posts
Okay.
because they were tagging Theory Official instead of, I think their name is like Theory Official Band or whatever. And like they were tagging me in their posts and stuff, and I was like, oh well, I can't keep Theory if Theory of a Dead Man is going by that now.
Yeah.
So I'll switch to something else. And then I was like, Vision sounds pretty cool. And I was like, but I want something that looks good on a hat. So I did like V exclamation point
It's amazing
SN.
that you even think about stuff like that. That is a. And I sound like a boomer, but it's
Well,
like
it was
I'm saying that's totally cool. But
because
that's
it was like,
but you're
we,
thinking you're in 10th, 12th, 11th, 12th grade, and you're thinking
yeah.
about branding.
Well, because it was like I basically had to do it from the ground up, and it was like, and I remember like Owen Hoke, one of my best friends from high school, and still to this day is, he was my manager back then,
Okay.
and I still kind of consider him my manager now because like we go all the way back. And I remember he was with me. We would spend like late nights. We'd like drive to a Sheets, get some food, and like bring my laptop, and I would like be building a website, building my SoundCloud, building my Instagram, start like, posting teasers, everything like that. And OCD dropped. And like I said, at that time I was still Theory. Eventually made the switch to Vision, but OCD dropped, and I got like 230 plays in a night on SoundCloud, which like for somebody who had never recorded a song before, I was like, whoa, that's a lot. I got a lot of Snapchat DMs. People were DMing me saying like, wow, I can't believe that was a lot better than I was expecting.
Mm-hmm.
You sound like NF a lot. That's really cool. Keep it up. This is really cool.
So
And
like
that's kind of,
your main mentor, musical mentor, as far as like pros, people you were vibing off of at this point was what you say NF?
NF. Yeah, like literally the letters NF.
Okay.
Like And Eminem too. I mean, I listened to this was like because I had listened to Eminem a long time before I started wanting to rap. And I had been listening to him. I would say probably some Joyner Lucas and Kendrick Lamar as well were big influences.
Mhm.
But I didn't quite know it yet because I'd only listened to a few songs of theirs
Mhm.
in high school and stuff. And then as I started rapping, I was like, wait a minute, like there's other artists besides NF that I kind of sound like, and I'm pulling influence from that I don't even know about.
Mhm.
And I went back and listened to some Kendrick and to some Joyner Lucas, and I was like, well, these guys I resonate with a lot too.
Yeah.
Um, the only reason NF was so huge for me was I think, well, for one, he was Christian, but the way that he portrayed it was not in your face, and the other thing was,
NF's version of Christian rap meant he didn't curse.
well, so he didn't curse, but that wasn't explicitly the reason. The way that I looked at it was because he said he had no issue with people who curse in their music, and he grew up a lot on Eminem, and a lot of his old music was trying to be Eminem.
Yeah.
And he said he wrote a song with swearing in it, and he just didn't like the way it sounded. He didn't like that, so he decided not to. But the Christian way, this is and this is the way that I've always tried to portray my music is there's a lot of Christian hip hop out there, and a lot of times, and this is unfortunate because there are really, really good Christian rappers, but unfortunately, they kind of get like a bad rep, and people think that if it's a Christian rapper, they're corny, and that's just immediate. And there are some corny Christian rappers, that's for sure. But one of the things that NF did really, really well was he would interlope Christian messages into a song about like his mom's drug use or something like that. And like, but it wouldn't be so in your face that like you knew it was a Christian rapper. So his music was everybody, but if you were listening for the Christian messages, you could hear it.
Okay.
And that was one of the things that I kind of wanted to do because it was like everybody has mental health issues. It's not just Christians. So, if I want to make music about mental health issues, I want anybody to be able to listen to it. But if the listener happens to be Christian and they hear my Christian values and my Christian messages in that song, then they're going to get an even deeper respect for it as well.
Mhm.
So, and again, right out the gate, I had still been forming this kind of idea of what I wanted. So I dropped OCD, then I dropped a song called Faith and a song called Love. And Faith and Love kind of flopped in terms of like traction because the first song got 200 plays, second song got 50, third song only got 20.
Mhm.
So it's like you just start to see this gradual dropping off
So
of people.
humility. I always get a kick out of like people who say musicians need humility because they act like rock stars. We don't need humility. The world,
No,
the world shows us that we are not the idiot.
yeah, because you see like the 200 listens and you're
Yeah.
like wow, but then you realize as you're dropping the other songs they just wanted to see what was going on,
Yeah.
and then it's very apparent.
Keep
Okay, no, I actually have 20 people that like my music. I don't have 200 people. I have 20 people because they listen to all three songs.
Yeah.
And it's like, so then, I started recording my first EP, Self Destructive. Looking back on it, it's almost embarrassing enough that I want to take it off Spotify, but I want to leave it up there just so people see like where I started.
Yeah.
That's the one that Logan mixed and mastered for me. And
Talk about.
and I think the big thing about that release was it was very, again, very humbling because I dropped it and I had been hyping it up for months, and I took a really, really cool photo, and like the album cover still to this day is one of the sickest album covers I've ever made. But I took a really, really cool photo, got all this promo, made a track list on the back, made it look like an album cover, like front and back.
Mhm.
Put as much time as I'd ever put into music into those songs and drop it. And I mean, we're talking 1 or 2 streams per song. And that's all I got. And that is the most humbling thing that has ever happened to me because it's like you put all this time in and you realize like not only if you don't advertise correctly, but if people aren't liking your music, like you're literally only going to get like 1 or 2 streams per song, and you may have put 8 hours into that song.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that's where you realize you don't do music for streams, you do it because you love it, because no matter how many people listen to it, I'm still going to write music.
Yeah.
So, and that was the biggest kind of slap in the face, but in a good way,
Yeah.
that could have got me to keep, it was like if you can be motivated after that, then you really want to be a musician.
Yeah. Real
That's
life.
kind of,
Real life.
yeah. So then after that, I went and I played my first ever show as a rapper, which was at Pitt, University of Pittsburgh. And
You were that
the
you went into University of Pittsburgh as a engineering major.
Yeah, so that introduced a lot of different complications because engineering, especially at Pitt is one of the higher engineering colleges, like higher ranked, and they hold their students to a very, very high standard. And I wanted to be an engineer, but I also obviously the dream is a musician. So, and I had a lot of engineering like qualities, and I had a lot of things that helped me with problem solving and things like that, and that definitely helps with music.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to engineering, free time is not a thing that you come by often. Like sophomore year, I was a computer engineer because you had to declare. And one of the sayings going around is, if you're a sophomore, if you're like a computer engineer and you have enough time to eat in a day, then you're not working hard enough.
Right.
And I thought that was a joke until I would spend 12 hours on a Zoom call with friends trying to tackle a homework assignment that was due the next day. And you would have about 10 of them a week. So it's like, that was a huge reason as to why, I really had to make a decision, engineering or music.
Mm.
Unfortunately, as much as I didn't want to make that decision, I had to make that decision. And ultimately I chose music. But one of the huge things that really formed that was like, again, performing. This was the first time I had performed since Soul Rider.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it was freshman year of college. It was called, I believe it was, I can't remember exactly what it was like. I think it was like Pit Factor is what it was called. And it was basically the same thing as Thon Factor, but if you won, you played on a massive stage. They closed the whole street down, and you were opening for Two Friends, which is like they're a pop band. They're Two Friends and Lovely the band. Lovely the band has that one hugely popular song. I can't think of the name right now, but they're big. They're a big pop group, and I was like, this is my chance. Like nobody knows who I am here, and I think that helped me at college. Nobody knowing who I was, because I could literally go around, and if somebody like, and I could be like, hey man, like I'm a rapper. And it's not like high school where it's like, oh really, I would never imagine Alex being a rapper.
Yeah.
It's college, I've never seen you before, you could be a rapper.
Yeah.
So I use that to my
Yeah.
advantage,
Mm-hmm.
and grew, and I played the show. In my opinion, absolutely tanked it. I bombed it. It was literally like, all the music was music that I look back on now and I don't love. But and I was basically, I paced back and forth on stage, and that's it. I didn't jump, I didn't move around, I did nothing, and I was like shaking the whole time I was up there. But
How much was
I
your
did
health?
it.
How much was your health an issue at this point?
Uh, a little bit. Like I would say my back was just starting to get worse. So I was good enough that like I popped two ibuprofen before, and I was fine on stage. So so that wasn't really a factor yet. So me running around on stage was definitely possible. I just didn't do it because I was so stressed out.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
and I lost. To no surprise, I lost that competition. But at that competition, I met one of the most influential people in my music career so far, and that is Jack Dufresne. And he was a senior at that point, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember he performed too and also lost. But he did a DJing set, and I thought his DJing set was incredible. And nobody else in the entire like seating thing, like in the entire room, was like jamming to it except for me. I was like, this is crazy. Like people don't understand how hard this is to do, to DJ this. And like, cause it wasn't just like song after song. It was like he was like doing all different kinds of like chops and like crazy drops and everything like that. And he like incorporated Star Wars into it at one point, and that was really cool. So after that competition, long story short, I wanted to talk to him. My friends wanted to go to Dunkin' Donuts. They were trying to pull me out to Dunkin' Donuts. And I said, hold on, I'm going to go talk to him for 5 minutes max. Go talk to him. We exchanged phone numbers. He told me he had like a catalog of over 100 beats I could use. Next week, we're recording a song and we get the song out that same week. So at that moment, I had kind of established the only friend at Pitt that was doing the same thing I was doing.
Okay.
and we kind of built off of
Starting
that.
to develop your a little bit of a tribe.
Yes, and I'm kind of, developing that like area for growth because he had a studio setup that was much nicer than my MacBook speakers and my crappy blue snowball. So he was like, I have a good, or actually I'd gotten a new mic at this point. So I did have a good mic, but still had no mixing knowledge. So it doesn't matter what mic you have. If you can't mix, it's not going to sound good.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when I went to his house and we mixed a song in like an hour and recorded a song in under an hour, I was like, okay, this guy's on to something. Like, let's keep working. And we just kept grinding and grinding and made a bunch of different songs. Some songs that were much far, like songs that were like possibly quality of like what I would write today.
Uh-huh.
I was writing back in freshman year of college, and like they were way ahead of their time in terms of the other songs. Um, and I think around that time I dropped Dreaming and Apology, which were like my first two songs involving semi like singing parts in them.
Okay. Which is a big
Um,
deal.
yes, because I was not a singer by any means.
I remember I'm having flashbacks of Scarlet Revolver rehearsals where I'm standing in front of you, um, singing your backup vocal.
That was, I mean, it needed to happen because like
Yeah.
I think it was just years of not thinking I could sing. And then hearing David
To
sing was
overcome it, you that, and I'm no Phil Freeman at all, obviously. But the one thing I will tell you, the first thing you need to do to improve your voice is to know you can sing.
exactly. And like not everybody like, and this is the thing that I've kind of noticed since then, especially when David Foote really started singing, that kind of like clicked something for me. It was like, David never claimed to be a singer and now he's singing lead on a song.
Hmm.
And it's like, okay, how is he doing that? And especially with Wyatt too. When Wyatt started getting a lot better, I was like, that's like crazy that can happen.
Hmm.
And so all of that kind of compounded, and like you can be a good singer. Anybody can be a good singer. There are some people that can be great singers, and there are some people that can be incredible singers.
Don't pull yourself. The message that I have is don't pull yourself out of it.
Exactly, because you never know. You could be a great singer.
And that could
You just might need.
be the hinge of your compositional. Yeah, singing's important because that's where you know nobody wants to hear instrumental music.
No, and also like even in terms of rap,
Yeah.
like every rapper I know has at least tried singing.
Hmm.
And for people like Eminem, sometimes it doesn't sound that great.
Yeah.
And he learned from that and kept singing and kept rapping instead.
Hmm.
But for somebody like NF actually started as a singer and then became a rapper. So then he would incorporate it. And that was like the one piece I felt like I was missing from my music was like, you know, how can I make a hook that's catchy if I can't sing?
Right.
And so messed around with that, kept trying to sing and was using pitch correction a decent bit. But again, like my rule was kind of if you can't sing it without pitch correction, don't record it. And that was kind of like where I was very, very limited in how many songs had singing in them because, I didn't want to be fake. And if I ever performed live, I wanted to be able to perform those singing songs.
Hmm.
And fast forward to my second performance live, I actually did sing live, and it was one of the most terrifying things I've ever done in my entire life at that moment and it was something as simple as like singing a background vocal to my own song. And it was very simple melodically. But again, I think there's a certain level of vulnerability when you're performing your own song.
There's a certain level of vulnerability when you're singing. Period.
True, true, because you're putting yourself out there in a way that and this was in a way that my roommate was watching, my girlfriend was watching, the girl my roommate was seeing at the time was watching, and it's like none of these people have heard me sing before. So when you hear me on stage all of a sudden singing, it's like that's your first impression, and everybody in the audience has never heard me sing before, and that was a major thing for me to overcome. Um, and I think I did very well. And I went back and I've watched the video over and over and over again of me performing that. And there's not much I would change about it besides movement.
Hmm.
And again, even with rap, there's a certain level of movement that is there's a certain level of lack of movement that is allowed, because if you're rapping a really really fast part or a really long part, you can get winded very easily. So you're not going to be running around while you're rapping this crazy long fast part. So there's a degree of, you can choose to move at some points and not to move at others. But I would change the movement for sure there. But that was a big thing, because I performed in my dorm in front of like 30 people, won that performance, and then moved on to Pitt's Got Talent, the like main stage thing. And I got beat by a magician, which was not the best feeling in the world. Um,
Again, humility.
exactly. But I put up a good show, and that was the first show that like really kind of I felt after the first two songs, I felt comfortable on that stage. Um, and I mean, if you want to even fast forward more now, I played a show back in I forget when it was. I think it was over the summer in Lancaster, and it was at the do you know the TCP? It's in Lancaster. It's like a little underground kind of like venue that's very hard to find. And I was selling tickets and I was getting people to go, and I was the third opener, and the headliners were actually two of my best friends in music. And I actually got to go up on stage with them for one of the headliner shows, for one of the songs in the headliner.
Yeah.
But that show that I performed, that was like my first good show, I would say, as a rapper. Like, I owned the stage. It was a very small stage, and it was like 2 feet off the ground, but I was like moving back and forth. I was, addressing different parts of the crowd. I wasn't just like blankly staring ahead. Um, I sang a lot, and we had the event organizer Craig that had put it on is a huge rap fan, and he's the kind of guy that can freestyle for 20 minutes straight, and it'll sound better than anything you've ever written.
Yeah.
So
Important is freestyle in 2000.
very. Well, in 2022, not as important as it used to be for sure. It's not the prerequisite to getting into rap as it used to be, but it's definitely. I think it should be too. And honestly,
Free universe. In other words, that
well,
separates the men from the boys.
yeah, and honestly, if we're being completely honest, if freestyle was a prerequisite, I would not be in the rap game yet, because I'm not amazing at it. I can do it a little bit. I can do it here and there,
Probably
and I
do
have a
better
massive
than you know.
respect.
You probably
What's
do.
that?
You do better than you know.
That's fair. If it really was a prerequisite and I really was required to be able to do it,
You went
I
a couple months and throwing yourself into the conquering that dragon. You throw
and
your
then yeah, and then once you conquer it, you've got your wings.
yeah.
Um, but so he was the kind of guy that could rap you under the table any day. Like literally could just like any bars that you have, he's gonna double them and do it freestyle. But one of the best videos my friends have ever recorded of me was I was up there recording, and I was doing one of my fast raps with a lot of double entendres, and they had the video on me and they zoomed in, and then they panned over to the right, and you just see Craig like going in, like loving my rap. And I was like, this is a guy who's probably way better than me, has way more years of experience than me, and he's like jamming and he loves it and he thinks that it's insane. And it was a really big molding factor for me, and and all of those things culminated into like this love for performing, which I already knew I had from Scarlet Revolver and Soul Rider, but it really resonated with the rap, and showing the vulnerable side of myself, and as opposed to being afraid of showing that, like embracing that and really kind of like focusing on the vulnerable side. And I think that's kind of what gets fans to
Yeah.
like enjoy it more, because the more relatable you are on stage, the more
The
people
less
are going to
fake
like
you
you.
are, the less fake you are, the more I'm going to root for that person.
Yeah, exactly. And especially if you're relatable too, like if it's like if you're talking about um oh, I have all this money and I have all this stuff, and I got this new car and I got this new, a lot of people can't relate to that. Now that music definitely turns up, and it's definitely a party song, but you know, if I'm on stage and I'm like, I have depression, and I do it in a tasteful way, but it's like I have depression and I'm dealing with past relationship problems or I'm dealing with something else. It's like, okay, now you've targeted people in the audience who are also dealing with that. And they listen to the lyrics and they're like, wait, that happened to me too. And now all of a sudden, instead of you just being an artist and they're the listener, now you're like making this connection. It's almost like you're having a conversation with somebody without actually having a conversation.
Mhm.
And um, I'll never forget this conversation I had with my therapist. When I released OCD, one of the songs I think is the worst song I've ever made in turn. Well, not the worst song, but one of the worst in terms of like quality and everything. My therapist actually took that song and played it for some of her patients that have OCD. And the thing I'll never forget is she said she played it for those kids who had OCD and they were like, "Wow, he gets me. Like he understands me." And that was like one of the first big like
This is a song that you
this is a
said
thing.
that was not good.
So I didn't send it to you, but it was
So,
I said it wasn't good because it basically
well, here's the thing, and this
yeah,
is something we all grapple with as artists. We're so close to the art, we can't see it from the outside standpoint,
exactly, yeah.
which makes me kind of like be kinder to yourself.
That is true, and that is something I've learned because I know a lot of perfectionists in the
Yeah,
industry
but
and stuff.
perfectionism is nice, but also it's not always accurate.
Can be detrimental for sure.
Yeah, well, in other words, your cutting on this song was probably the worst I've ever did, but if it brought some sort of therapeutic value to some community, maybe they all see past imperfections.
That's true.
Maybe what the things that we value because as perfect musicians, like the mixing, whatever mumbo jumbo, they got the real stuff. They appreciate it for the real reason,
Exactly. Yeah,
okay? Not for all the stuff that we throw in there. So
that's true.
the lesson learned is there is a time to be kind to yourself, and maybe, and I'm not saying this about you, just
Just
this
any
is something.
musician.
This is all musicians. We don't have the ability to see what the rest of the world sees. We don't, or we don't know. We really don't. So, um, so after I'm saying after vision, your vision now.
I am. Yeah.
Yeah, that is your main thing. But do we want to talk about your other little side project?
We can a little bit. Yeah. I'll just not go into huge details about like the name and stuff. So, um,
You're trying other a completely other vibe, complete
yes,
persona.
yes.
We'll leave that blank. We're not gonna tell the world you're anonymous. Uh, art,
My persona. Yeah.
yeah, which is wonderful. Um,
I think it's funny and simultaneously one of the most important things I've done since I've started making music because I mean, you as a teacher to me, I think honestly, you being the teacher that kind of you influence this more than I think I realized at the beginning is kind of, you know, the best part about being a musician is not finding your niche and just sticking to it and never growing out of that. The best part about being a musician is there's always more music to learn. And one of the biggest things that I've noticed and why music is such a passion to me is like you could you can master quite literally master the craft of recording, mixing, mastering, producing, songwriting, everything like that. And that's good. That's all great. And that's everything, that's what you aim to do. But at the end of the day, like what's going to make you more happy? Being that pop artist that only does pop or being that pop artist that, also knows, where pop came from and like what different influences influence the music. Like right now, in the pop industry, like we're getting a lot of gospel influences in the way that these choirs are set up and the way that things are set up before. But then also there's this pop punk fusion coming in now. And it's like to be able to like step back and see where everything comes from is music. So like
So the importance of history.
yes,
That,
and the
that's
importance.
a 16-year-old Alex Brouse.
Yeah, didn't want to learn about it back then. I just wanted to play. I wanted to play "Sweet Child of Mine" by Guns N' Roses.
Yeah.
Um, but like it's I think one of the best parts about being a musician is you're never done learning,
Hmm.
and I think if you stay stagnant with one thing, you can become a master. I mean, it's like that saying goes, a master of one is better than or what is it? A jack of
All
it was like the jack of all trades. Um,
one. Yeah.
Yeah, but a master of one is better than a jack of all trades is kind of like what the saying says.
Mhm.
But I read into it somewhere. The full saying actually says like being a jack of all trades is actually better than being a master of one.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of like,
You can speak.
well, yes,
Being a master one, you can only speak one language. You can only speak to one group of people.
and while you may be able to make a career out of that, like
That one.
there are people that only produce pop music and they're successful and whatever. But I highly doubt.
What does their pop music sound like if they don't bring in outside influences?
That is true. And a lot of these pop producers can also do hip hop and they can also do rock and they can also do punk. So it's kind of like, being a musician, it kind of boils down to, how much do you know, but not just in one category. It's like it's how well versed are you in everything. And I think by making this persona, and this is why I think you probably influenced it more than I thought right out the gate, is by learning from you, I was kind of like having to learn about the other stuff even when I didn't want to. But then you realize the reason why Rock Band was so fun and the reason why the creative process was so easy is because you had all these influences to pull from. You weren't just writing metal music. You weren't just writing punk music. You were writing all different kinds and you were pulling from different influences. So I noticed with Vision, um, there was a very particular sound that Vision had, and at the beginning that was an NF clone, and it gradually started to divulge into more of this like weird, like rap, glitch infused rap and stuff like that. And one of the big things was there's a lot of markets that look for glitchy stuff, and rap is not typically one of them. And while at first I thought that might have been a niche, it started to take over to a point where I was almost losing the rap. And I was kind of like, this is not what I want to have happen, because Vision has a very established idea of what it sounds like. And by changing that too much, I might affect my listeners. I might affect, you know, future collaborations. And the other thing was by creating that second persona, not only was it kind of a social experiment to see, you know, how good am I at this other genre? Like, can I really pass as an artist from this genre? Because when I started with rap, like my first rap song was nowhere near where my newest rap song is in terms of quality. But when I started in this new genre, now all of a sudden, like because of the production knowledge I had and because of the knowledge of listening to all these other songs, was I might have actually been on par with some of these songs. So it was interesting to see like what if I switched genres entirely, switched names, and released under this new name, how fast would growth occur? And what I'm noticing is, you know, my name is circulating in this new genre, but nobody knows who I am. And that anonymous factor is very.
Remember, okay, I'm gonna go back to like 1995. No, whatever. When we did the Gorillas
Yeah,
in summer camp,
yeah,
we're the Gorillas,
cartoons.
right?
I mean, we know now they're like two British guys, but like, you
Yeah.
know,
Daft Punk,
yeah, covered by masks.
right?
All these EDM producers like Dead Mouse
I
and
was gonna say
Marshmello,
Dead Mouse, yeah.
like, and that there's a certain level of there's
Very,
a cool factor.
very, very cool factor.
Like from an artist perspective, it's like you can fully put yourself out there.
Hmm.
And like I have a vocal changer on so you don't hear my voice. And it's probably I mean, if anything, it's elevated my creative process tenfold because
And
it's
it
like,
probably help you overcome a lot of fear stuff.
yeah, because it's like well, maybe it's like, well, maybe I'll try this crazy singing run, this vocal run that I've never tried before. Let me try it out on the second account first, and I'll release it, see what people think. And like a lot of um the reaction was very, very good.
Mhm.
And it kind of like increased my confidence even with vision because I'm doing stuff on there that I've never done before. And I'm doing things that I've always been afraid to do. And when I do that, and then my name starts circulating, and people are like, this is crazy. Like, I love this. It's like, okay, there's the affirmation I needed to, you know, go and do that crazy thing I wanted to do on Vision.
So I gotta say something that it is absolutely badass that you at every step, every corner you turn, you talk about the fear that you have for doing something,
Yeah,
but it never stops you.
that's the goal. Yeah, the goal would be it never stops me.
It never stops you. Okay, you may be scared to death, but you know that after you it's some sort of a um, rites of passage that this is what I got to go through in order to feel. The more experiences you have, the more at ease you're going to be at those experiences.
Yeah, and
And
I,
the first time you do it is going to be terrifying. And the
mhm.
only way for it not to be terrifying is not to do new experiences. And to not do new experiences, you're not going to be really an artist.
Exactly. And I mean, I always and I have conversations with my buddies who are in the same field all the time. And I think I talked to you about this a couple days ago when we were on the phone, but I think the big thing I noticed, and this may sound corny, this may sound cheesy, but there is validity behind it. Like all these artists who are big, they do interviews. And I used to soak up every NF interview that I could find. See, how does this man work? How does he do this? And I started watching a bunch of other interviews, and the one solid thing that is in every single interview is don't stop working no matter what. You'll make it if you keep working. Even when you get knocked down, keep working. And while that's not 100% true, you don't, unfortunately, not everybody makes it, even if they don't stop working. But the sense of validity in that is, we've met people, I've met people like Quentin Jones, and like from an outsider's point of view, it's like, is Quentin Jones touring in a massive rock band? No, but he's met all of his idols. He's played with all of his idols. He plays shows on the regular. He makes money off of music, and he owns a recording studio.
And he's a
In my
songwriter.
head,
And he's a
yeah, and
songwriter, and he can at any given point, he can he's basing his life not off of like selling something other than himself.
exactly. And in my mind, like I remember 12-year-old me when he came to talk to us was terrified. And I remember by the end of his little spiel about, you got to be willing to drop everything to do music, he was like, okay, now who wants to be a professional musician? And I remember the only person who raised their hand was David Foote. And David Foote is in college right now being a musician and like doing everything he can to become a musician. And at the time, I wasn't ready for that speech.
Mm-hmm.
But like looking back on it now, you realize it's less about, you got to be willing to, give up everything. It's more of no matter what comes your way, you can't stop. So, and I always tell my friends, I'm like,
What
how many,
it may not be a, in other words, not giving up. It may not be success. May not be your 17-year-old idea of what success is.
exactly.
Okay, because you're kind of affiliated with some record labels, and you're doing okay to bring people up to snuff. You changed your market, or you changed your major from engineering to marketing, which I think is incredibly smart. Okay, and um, keeping on going, you can grow and grow and grow, and you like Rock Band. we don't know what we're going to be. Let's
Yeah.
try some experience with some experiment with some stuff, and the understanding that all this growth business, as we have discussed prior to turning on the record button, nothing is ever linear.
No.
Okay, and that is the most truthful sentence this today will be about. Nothing is ever linear. Okay.
No, it is very much
Your 17-year-old self
scattered.
might have wanted to play guitar in Def Leppard. And
Yeah, that's pretty close.
okay, or whatever.
Yeah.
Green Day. Or to be in a pop punk band or or whatever. Do something, with Scarlet Revolver and tour the world or whatever. But
Yeah.
you keep your craft going, and it'll evolve, and opportunities will happen because a lot of people give up.
That's yeah. I mean, that's
People give up, and it's like if they can live without it, then they should live without it.
that's the truth. I mean, and in the music industry, nothing is guaranteed, but the biggest thing about the music industry is it's there. Like it's right there. And like it's not and while the music industry is very, very difficult to penetrate and to maintain, it's not as inaccessible as people think it is. It's more just a matter, it's just like, if I were to go on to college to become an engineer, I go through 4 hard years of excruciatingly difficult schoolwork, but I find an internship and now I have a full-time job doing what I love. You can do that with any job, including music. It's just music is almost like the equivalent of getting like a med degree. It may take you now the difference between getting in the music industry and getting a medical degree is music may be quicker, but music could take up to 8 years to get there. But the thing is, you look at a med student and you look at a musician, and they're not that different. They go through grueling things
Mm-hmm.
that, and they do things they don't want to do, but they keep that vision of where they want to be.
Or
Yeah, exactly.
some of it is you
And
don't want to do it, but the other part of that is no, it's not wanting to do it. It's terrified to do it.
well, yeah, exactly.
Different things.
They are. And I think,
But both are things.
yeah, well, I think people want to paint a picture that the music industry is impossible to make it into. It's like,
I would say that there's never been a better time than to be a musician because of all the opportunities that there is no guard at the gate.
no.
There is no guard at the
And
gate like
yeah,
20 years ago, 10 years ago. There were still guards at the gate that
yeah, you needed to have experience.
unless you had a major label backing you, nothing could go. And that's not the case anymore.
No, now you have a MacBook and a crappy microphone, and you pay $20 a year, and you're on every streaming platform there ever is.
Yes.
And it's like, you know, I think one of the biggest thing, and like when I would always talk to my friends, I would always say, how many, successful artists is it going to take telling you just keep working? How many of those people is it? How many times do you have to hear that before it actually clicks? Like, oh wait, maybe that's how I do it.
Don't quit.
Like if one thing is consistent among all artists, they always say, "Oh, I just never gave up, and now I'm here." And it's like, what more advice do you need? You don't need to talk to an advisor to say, "How do I keep pushing?" You just keep doing it. And like, obviously, there's a difference between calculated growth and you know praying that something's going to happen and not doing anything about it.
Yeah.
Like that's the other thing
Mhm.
is like you can want to be a musician all day long, but unless you're doing something about it, it's not going to happen. So like
Yeah.
I think a lot of people get scared off by that too, because like I've tried starting a business, I've been creating a brand, I stayed late nights on my laptop, I paid money when I knew I wouldn't get money back
Mhm.
in order to start my brand. And you know it's it's scary because like it's not, you can't get a degree in the music industry. Like you can't be like, I want a degree in music industry.
You
You
can
have to get
get a
it.
degree in the music industry, but that $100 doesn't necessarily, unless you're going to be a college professor, it doesn't mean anything.
Exactly.
The people that are doing it, aren't necessarily the ones that you don't need 100. This is my message. You want to go to school, learn marketing. You want to be a musician, you want to be a professional musician, major in marketing. Study with somebody who knows what music is about. Study
Yeah.
study the history of it. Learn some instrument. Learn music. Develop your develop your product. Develop your creativity. Develop whatever is yours. Um, how much is the guitar and the bass and all that? How much does that find its way into your hip hop?
A lot more than you would expect. So, if anything, the majority of what I pull from guitar into my rap is music theory. So, like, I'm a firm believer now, especially after watching Billy Cave do it, and especially after doing it myself with a few instruments, that if you have a good enough music theory knowledge, you can play virtually any instrument
Yes.
to a decent level.
Yes.
Like, you're not going to be a master in ukulele, but if you understand how a guitar
Case
works.
in point.
What's that?
Eli Weary is another case in point.
Yes, and you just Phil Cave especially too. You hand Phil Cave an instrument and he'll learn it in like 5 minutes
Mm-hmm.
to an extent where if you told him play this chord progression, he could probably do it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like what I've noticed is like I will not necessarily, I'm not always plugging in the guitar and recording it for, a song. Now with that alternate persona, I do that a lot more. And that's been really cool because I've rediscovered my love for guitar in that as well. But with rap music, it tends to be something along the lines of piano or harmonizing with my vocals, or, if I'm making an 808 pattern, you need to know the root notes of every chord
Yeah.
to do the 808 pattern. And like,
So music theory is plays a huge role.
yeah, and that's kind of like where I pull the most in. But again, like if I'm working with some friends that want to do more traditional like rock or pop looking stuff, I need to be able to pull the bass out and play a quick bass line or play a quick guitar riff. And it keeps me on my toes, but I love it. And I think like, while inherently, I thought maybe that I would be a guitar player if I were to be a musician. I still am a guitar player, but like I'm not going to be like Ed Sheeran going up and singing and playing guitar. Like I'd be more like a utilizes guitar in production, maybe plays a solo here or two on stage, but the majority of what I do now is a vocalist and a producer. So it's kind of like and I think the biggest thing about being a producer involving that stuff is like you're doing pretty much everything. So like I'm not only doing drums, but I'm doing melody and I'm doing, bass and I'm singing. So some of these songs, every aspect of it is made by me. So I have to like know how it gels together. Other things I'll use samples from like Looperman or from Splice just to give me an idea of kind of what I want, and I'll build a beat around that and things like that. I think it's applied differently than it used to be applied. Like before it was I'm just straight up playing guitar and singing.
As
Now it's
and the nothing is ever linear. What
yeah,
what you learn from guitar lessons from Scott Hoon or from me in our interactions.
yeah,
It it's not. In other words, it's there and you're using it, but
yeah,
it's in really cool ways. It's not in let's put down this rock riff in a cover band.
yeah. It's like, oh, let's add this like very slight flavor
Yeah.
of guitar, but then I'm gonna mix it a certain way that it doesn't even sound like a guitar anymore.
So the idea, and here another thing is um, how you're another one of those examples of how the digital audio workstation, that is your second or third instrument or first.
Yeah,
Could be first at this point.
at this point, probably yes.
Yeah. So so that's wonderful. How production is absolutely, and some of your engineering brain absolutely went. That
Oh, 100%. Yeah,
absolutely helped.
because it's like when you learn about a DAW or a DAW and you have to like pick it up, it is like we were talking before recording. It's very much an instrument and it's very much a tool, and if you treat it as such, it can feel very, very like non-musical. But what I've learned is if you kind of it's less of knowing how to use Logic. It's not very hard to use. Like I use Logic Pro and I use FL Studio.
Okay.
It's not so much that you need to learn how to use Logic. It's you almost need to learn how to abuse Logic. Like it's like to become a good music producer, it's less of like, here's the rudimentary way of doing things and more of play around with it to the point where you get it to do something that you didn't even know it could do. And now you've used it. It's like guitar. It's like
Hmm.
you can play strict power chords or you can play a strict scale, but it's not till you abuse that guitar.
When you let go and you
Yeah,
vibe your inner Jimi Hendrix.
that's and yes, and like Jimi Hendrix chords are the perfect thing. They're chords that like when you look at the way they're structured, they shouldn't work, but they do.
Hmm.
And then it's like, and somebody had to
Major
figure that
third,
out.
minor third.
Exactly. And it's like somebody figured that out and Jimi Hendrix figured that out.
Yeah.
But like I look at some people in the music industry and I'm like, this guy's the Jimi Hendrix of Logic Pro because he figured out, you know, oh, if you use Verispeed on Logic, you can speed up and slow down the song and you can take your song that sounds complete and just completely flip it on its head by slowing it down and pitching it down and like, you can do reverses and you can take a guitar melody and chop it a bunch
Hmm.
and then just reverse the whole thing.
Yeah.
Doesn't even sound like a guitar anymore.
Yeah.
So like in theory all a DAW is a workstation for recording. How you choose to use it is what makes it unique. And I think the best thing about a DAW, and this is maybe a little bit biased, but in terms of like a guitar and stuff like that, with a guitar you're bound to maybe 24 frets and 6 strings.
Hmm.
With a DAW you're bound to whatever that software is capable of. So and then when you add external plugins, it even adds more. So it's almost like you can get like a million different variations of a sound out of a DAW depending on the person. And I think that makes the music industry more accessible because the music industry is so focused on you got to be unique. And when you open up a DAW, like even if you follow a tutorial to a T, it's not going to sound the same as that tutorial.
Hmm.
Like because it just works differently in every specific way. And like even when you're bouncing stuff, like you're exporting,
Yeah.
there's 3 different ways to export. You can export it, you know, with normalization on where it squashes everything. You can export it where it only stops clipping, or you can just straight up turn that off. And if things clip, they clip. And sometimes you want things to clip because that saturation from the clipping makes your vocal sound cool or
Yeah.
makes the beat sound cooler. So it's like, even the things that seem so elementary and so like straightforward, you can mess with to a point where it sounds so different. And or you can take a kick drum and you can loop it so many times so fast that it becomes a sine wave.
Hmm.
And then it's just like, okay,
These are
now
all
what do we do with that sine wave?
you
Like,
creative rabbit holes that are not
yeah.
linear.
And you can spend an hour making a sound.
Yeah.
And that's one of the best things that, once you, but it reminds me of like the analogy that I can think of is like when I learned skiing and snowboarding. They say skiing is easy to learn but hard to master. Snowboarding is hard to learn but easy to master. I think if you were to look at a DAW, it's one of those easy to learn but hard to master things because anybody can pick up a DAW and record. I mean, Audacity's there for a reason. Audacity is a DAW.
Hmm.
And anybody can hit record and then export a file. But then, when you get into all the intricacies, it gets so like you just keep going down rabbit holes. And next thing you know, you've watched 5 hours of YouTube videos and you've learned more than you could even imagine.
Right.
So
What are you
that's
doing now? What are you doing now?
well, I'm currently writing an album. I'm actually writing 2 albums, one for Vision and one for the separate account. Um and I have some ins with RCA Records, um kind of helping run a sub label. So essentially it's like a feeder team for the major leagues is kind of how I look at it. It's like we work with people before they see RCA Records,
Hmm.
and then we kind of mold them into the artists and we give them an environment to work and we give them producers and mixing and mastering engineers like ourselves
Mhm.
to work with. We make a little money on the side, and we also get to help them grow. And through their growth, actually, it grows the business. And because we work with it, we get to use their services for free, which so then it inherently grows us. So the goal with Slumbo Records or Slumbo Labs is what it's called
Subsidiary,
is
a subsidiary for RC.
yeah.
Okay.
And it's kind of a one-stop shop because we've got people that are capable of doing music videos, we've got people that are capable of doing promo, we've got people like myself that do a lot of marketing, and we've also got people who um all of us are A&R. We're all looking for people constantly. And one of the big things that I've noticed from Slumbo is it's very much it's pretty much the reincarnation of the business that I tried to start in 2021, which was Unstable Labs. And Jack from college, who I met, we wanted to start Unstable Labs.
Jack Jack Dufresne.
Yeah, Jack Dufresne.
Okay.
We wanted to start that together, and we pitched it to Jake, the senior vice president of A&R at RCA Records.
Okay.
He's a family friend of Jack's, so that's how we met him. Um, he said, I like that idea so much. I'll tell you what, if you let me kind of head it, I'll give you all the resources you need to do it. And we said, sure, that sounds like a great idea because he's Jack's fresh out of college. I'm still in college. There's no way we're going to get the traction to take this thing off overnight.
Yeah.
But with Jake, the possibility of that is a lot better. So we did that, and now we have like 4 or 5 interns working. We've got 3 or 4 artists, and in a week of them releasing their stuff, they each got over 1 million streams, and it's like that's a big win for us. And like, so the goal is, and this is kind of where the hard part of music industry comes in. Like every intern there has a dream of being an artist. So, you want to grow, you want to make it, and you want to help this company, but at the same time, you want to focus on yourself. And it's all about that balance. And when you're doing that and you're managing 2 artists and you're trying to get a college degree like myself, it can become very overwhelming very quickly. And I think,
What's interesting, I think they're setting up a thing that the artists that we're endorsing and we're signing are learning the business. They're
yeah,
not interested in people who don't have any kind of business head.
yeah, exactly. And all the guys that work there have that. Like all of us interns have not only the drive to be a musician, but I mean, like Thomas, for instance, one of the other interns, he is so good at production that he like and he does this often. He'll just pick a random artist in the music industry that he says I want to work with. And I mean, we're talking like people up there. Like Doja Cat, she's like a big pop artist right now. He's like, I want to work with Doja Cat. So he made a Doja Cat type beat, sent it to her team, and they like it and they want to work with him now.
Yeah.
And he manifests all of that. And like Jack, he's got a very business oriented mindset too in the way that he approaches collaborations. He can talk to just about anybody and get them to want to work with us.
Mm-hmm. That's
I
that's the direction you need.
Exactly. And then I tend to have a very quick turnaround time. So if you give me a beat to work on, I can give you a demo in 3 hours.
Okay.
And within the next day have a mastered version of it. Now it's not going to be necessarily the best, but it's going to be something that you can go off of as a reference and then decide, do I want to keep working with him or not?
Yeah.
And then Reed offers, who's one of the other interns, has a very good sense of well, he gets down and dirty with a lot of the artists, and he will literally just work with them and like make songs with them and just keep cranking out songs and stuff like that. And so we all kind of fit really well together. And I think the big obstacle we need to overcome within the next year is just utilizing all of our skills to be the most efficient we can be. Because right now we have a company's doing very well, and it's just a matter of how do we make that as efficient as it possibly can and set ourselves up for continued growth.
Yeah.
And I think ultimately the end goal would be to either A, come out of college and just keep working on this full time, or B, get signed before I even come out of college to RCA, because that's the whole goal, is like by being this subsidiary label, RCA is looking at us the whole time,
Yeah.
and we get their services for free. So we drop a song, we're dropping it under Slumbo Labs. It
Yeah.
could get playlisted, it could get, all that stuff. So by RCA constantly looking at us, if all of a sudden I'm one of those people that does a million streams because I utilize Slumbo Labs, RCA might go, that's someone we want to sign. So now we'll sign you, and then that could become the job. So it's all been the same dream since the start, which has just been make it in the music industry and be an artist. It's just like you said, nothing's ever linear. So sometimes you got to do things that scare you. And I will say it's very scary because it's technically an internship right now, but I haven't been cleared to work yet with my surgery, so I'm trying to find a job. And when, we're getting offered jobs where you might get paid a couple grand, but there's a 90% chance it falls through and you get nothing. It's very scary kind of approaching that from a college student perspective and saying, like, it's almost like you got to approach it with like I'd rather have guaranteed money than a lot of money.
Hmm.
And to a certain extent, that's true. But in the music industry, no money is technically guaranteed unless keep working. So that's
Unless you prove your worth.
exactly. And that's one of the things that Jake has taught us, honestly, is like he had us work with a couple artists. Artists didn't like our mixes. Jake really liked our mixes. And Jake said, don't get bogged down by it. You guys are worth that. I'm not going to ask him to work with you guys anymore because he's wasting your time. And that was the first time when I was kind of like, you know what? Like, yeah, like my time is now that I'm working with this, my time is technically worth something.
Yeah.
Like, and I've done enough proving with my mixing and mastering that as an artist, I had to kind of realize that if you send me a song and I work on it, that's worth something. It may not be worth, the amount that Thomas is worth, because Thomas is a better producer and a better mixer, but it's worth something. And that's, again, goes back to that Soul Rider thing of, our time on stage is worth something. When
Yes.
you get paid for the first time, it's like, you have a field day, because it's like, that's crazy to me.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm, I like, you finally see everything come to fruition and you're like, maybe I am working hard enough, because it's very easy to look at other people and say that they're working harder than you. But what I've learned the most is, you got to look at your conditions, you got to look at what you're doing, and you got to say, am I doing better than I did before? And I kind of measure my success by year in college. So freshman year, I dropped an EP and I played my first ever show. Sophomore year, I played 2 more shows and dropped 12 singles. And junior year now, I played my first ever paid show, and I dropped my first real album, and I got started working with Jake. And by senior year, maybe it's I get my first 100,000 streams. You never know. Like, it's like, as long as I look back and I see
Steady
that each
progression.
year, yeah, as there's growth each year, I know I'm doing something right.
Okay,
And yeah,
Alex, we got to wrap this up, but before we do, I think there's a part two in order.
sure, yeah,
First
100%.
of all, we're not done here.
No,
we
that's
do
one of the
wanna, we
banes
do
of
want to we do want to make shout outs to Logan Summy,
yes,
to Cal Weary.
Cal Weir, yeah,
I'm gonna say Richard Riley,
yes, Richard as well,
Quentin Jones,
Quentin,
Quentin Jones, because all these people, and and you were mentioning the perfect fifth, Terry Selders,
of
Eric,
course.
they made everything happen. Uh, in other words, the teams, the people that have raised you.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite literally that. It's like,
Terry Selders certainly, he was the brain, he was the organizer, he was the guy. But with that said, I think there's a second. There's going to be a part two here. Um,
yeah,
thank you for this. And then
yeah, of course.
this is part one of your story, and I'm excited for you.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me, of course.
There is nothing that we have. Nothing is ever linear.
No, nothing.
I would not have predicted this, but it's actually better than anything I would have predicted.
Yeah, if you would have told 16-year-old me that I was going to be a rapper, I would not have believed him.
Proud of you, immensely proud of you, and I'm gonna hire you.
Well, thank you.